Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. Germany is heading into a crucial election, with migration emerging as a top concern for voters. Amid this, mass protests have erupted against the Alternative for Germany AfD party, with 250,000 demonstrators in Munich alone voicing opposition to extremism. At the same time, CDU leader Friedrich Merz has faced backlash for seeking AfD support on migration policy, raising questions about shifting political lines. What does this all mean for Germany's political future? Well, joining us today on TVP World to discuss this is Roland Freudenstein, co-founder of the Brussels Freedom Hub. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning.
So I would first like to touch upon these protests, these massive protests. What does that reveal about the state of current German democracy?
Well, I'd say above all polarization. But let's not forget Germany has 82 million citizens now, and 200,000, 250,000 is an impressive number. But we have seen in opinion polls that the majority of people actually are worried about illegal migration, and that the attitude of Friedrich Merz 2 weeks ago actually finds a majority among the voters agreeing with him.
Right, like you mentioned, we also see a rise in polling numbers with the AfD party as well. Do you think the migration issue is what is driving their popularity, or are there any aspects to it?
No, migration is not only the top concern of German voters, or one of the three top concerns. It is definitely also the issue which has been driving the AfD's rise in the opinion polls. And I think it looks like that the AfD is going to double its seats in the Bundestag in the upcoming election in 2 weeks. So yes, it's a real issue. It's a concern for German voters, and the AfD is profiting from it. But not only, I would say that the strategy of Friedrich Merz to make this topic a top item on his campaign agenda, and to also advocate a tougher line than the current government, is actually also successful.
Can you help us understand, break that down a little bit too, when it comes to the successful stance you mean by strongly enforce migration policies, or the Migration Pact?
Well, there are several components here. One is to actually make it impossible for people just to cross the border to Germany and then apply for political asylum there. There has to be a procedure before that in a German consulate, in a German embassy, in another EU country, because Germany is in the middle of the European Union. So we're talking about countries that are lying further out in the European Union, where this application should actually be made. I mean, that's the agreement according to the so-called Dublin system. And then the other big item is, as soon as a migrant has committed a crime, they should be forcibly, if necessary, removed, repatriated, or moved to a third country, but outside of the European Union. And these two items are rather popular policies on which the current government, which is, the minority caretaker government for another 2 weeks, has not been very successful.
Right, and during the debate between Scholz and Friedrich Merz, the Polish theme also came up. Here's a quote from one of the dialogue. They're saying that it is enough for the Polish Prime Minister to say we do not accept refugees, and already we have a European crisis. This is from the current German Chancellor. The situation, in his view, is actually enter into force of a European asylum system in 2026, which would perhaps relieve the burden of Germany. Do you think that this stance will be gaining any popularity by alleviating the situation in Germany, by kind of putting it on the other countries? Will the refugee debate in countries like Poland, for example, affect the election results in Germany?
I think that the one factor that made this such a hot issue over the last couple of months has been a series of violent attacks by migrants, with some mass killings and some very cruel killings of bystanders and completely innocent civilians. So that is what was driving the urgency here, not any policy by the Polish government. But yes, I mean, there are disagreements between, for example, Friedrich Merz and Donald Tusk. There were also disagreements between Olaf Scholz, the current chancellor, and Donald Tusk when it came to unilaterally refusing people at the German border. We have to, I think, see that having a possible solution by the second half of 2026 is not cutting the eyes for populations in Europe that see the urgency much more strongly and want action right now.
Do you think we will be seeing more and more political parties adopting a stronger stance on migration, seeing that this has been the thing that is giving AfD its rise? Or do you think that the AfD party will eventually absorb the voters that do have migration as the top of their concerns?
No, there's a lot of Germans that are worried by uncontrolled illegal migration, but who do not want to vote for a neo-Nazi party, which the AfD clearly is, at least in parts. So that is exactly why actually all parties, even the Greens with their very multiculturalist approach, have become tougher on migration, but in varying degrees. And here, if you look at the four parties in the political center in Germany, the Greens, the Liberals, the Social Democrats, and the Christian Democrats, it's been the Christian Democrats that have, let's say, traditionally been a little bit more of a law and order party, and therefore they have also become tougher in proposing policies on migration. But I do not see the AfD sweeping up all migration skeptics in Germany. That's not going to happen like that.
Right, and last but not least, of course, most of the party have been saying that they will not cooperate with the AfD, form coalitions, vote with them. But seeing that, like I mentioned, they have been soaring in popularity, is this sustainable? Is there a world where they will have to be forced to cooperate with them in order to get anything passed?
Yeah, you're talking about the so-called firewall. So is the firewall holding
Will it
all other
hold?
parties, or at least all democratic parties, against the AfD? Well, the jury is out, I would say. But I think the likelihood of a coalition by anyone with the AfD is very, very low. And it's certainly not going to happen in the next 4 years. After 2029, we'll see. But for the moment, a coalition is excluded. The next stage, or the next the weaker stage of cooperation, would actually be kind of, agreeing on parliamentary deals. This also didn't happen 2 weeks ago with Friedrich Merz and the CDU. All he did was to propose to the government that, look, guys, you can vote for a proposal that I have made for many, many months, or you risk that the AfD is the only one that gets it through Parliament. And well, in the end, it didn't get a majority. But, passively accepting that the AfD votes for something cannot be a reason to reject a reasonable legislative proposal. So that is the line that Merz is following, and it seems like the opinion polls bear him out at the moment.
All right. Thank you so much for your input and insight. And of course, we'll have to see how the election turns out. But in the meantime, thank you so much for being with us on TV World.
Thank you.
Cheers. And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TV World.